Welcome to Porch Stories. I'm Ben Secundi, a resident of Highland Beach, and today I will be interviewing Charlene Drew Jarvis, a resident of Venice Beach. Well, welcome. Charlene, let's start with the first question. What are some of your fondest memories of the beach?
Ben, that's a great question because Highland Beach and Venice Beach are beaches that, for me, have very strong and emotional memories. My father was a physician. We did not see him as much as we would like to see him. But when we came to the beach, he was at the beach with us. He taught us how to swim. I remember that my sister Bibi and I would sit there at the edge of the beach and we would watch my father swim way out in the Chesapeake Bay until we could hardly see his head. And when we thought all was lost, that head of the swimmer would reappear and he would swim back to the beach and sit with us and teach us to swim. And I remember his bathing suit. I remember he had kind of a wool cotton bathing suit with a gold clasp on it. And I remember his gentleness. We lived here at the beach at the West Gregory cottage. My father and Nora Drew Gregory were brother and sister. The West family and the Gregory family married because of Charles West and Laverne West. Monroe Gregory lived across the street. So we really are talking about a group of members of the family who would come to that house and who would go to the beach together and would sit on the beach together. But what I most remember is my father and the picture that I have in my mind about him, because he died when I was 8 years old. He was barely 46 years old when he passed. And the memory then of my father at this beach, at Highland Beach, teaching us to swim, being with us, and my mother on the beach and his family, that is a memory that makes this beach very, very emotionally special to me. Well, my mother was a saint. After my dad died, she continued to bring us here to the beach. My mother did not know how to drive after he died, but she learned how to drive. And she would pile the four of us into the car. So that's Bibi, Charlie, Sylvia, and myself. She would drive us here to the beach. After a while, she decided that she would purchase a home, or really build a home, on Henson Avenue. So the beach cottage that we lived in was on Henson Avenue. It was right next to, practically, Mercer Cook. Mercer Cook, my father and Mercer had been in Amherst College together and at Dunbar High School together. And when my dad died, Mercer Cook and my little sister Sylvia went and got ice cream all the time. Eddie Mazik, who lived right across the way from us, was someone that we looked to as a father figure. And I remember chocolate ice cream at their home as well. I remember once when Mom was driving us here to the beach, the headlights went off at some point coming down the road. And I was in the front seat. I took a flashlight and I held my arm out of the car so that my mother could see, getting us down that old dirt road to Highland Beach. At Highland Beach, we went to the beach every single day. We went in the morning and we stayed until the afternoon and evening. We did something that we called walking the roads, and that is a very fond memory for me. What that meant is we left our house in the evening and we found a group of friends. Jackie Nelson was a part of that group, Warner Lawson was a part of that group, Jan Gregory was a part of that group, Linda West and Nate, and we walked the roads. And walking the roads was something that we all enjoyed because we were together. We were together in a place that was seen by us as safe harbor. This was a place that protected us. This was a place where we knew our parents, friends, and so we really felt it was safe harbor. I remember a kind of experience that I had. We were on the Venice beach when we had a beach, and somebody saw a shooting star. And when whoever that was said, when you see a shooting star, you're supposed to kiss somebody. Well, we saw shooting stars thereafter, and very frequently. And so that was one of the ways in which we really enjoyed the beach as teenagers. We enjoyed being on the beach. We enjoyed being at the weenie roast that I heard Bucky talk about. We enjoyed the Labor Day contests. Dr. Dean ran the movies in the pavilion. We went to the movies in the pavilion. We square danced in the pavilion. And the pavilion was really yet another place where we could come together as teenagers and be together. The Labor Day races were great fun. I remember very well that my sister Bibi and I competed in one of those races. And my sister was a very good swimmer, as was I, but she beat me by a hair, and I remember that very well. I remember that my sister Sylvia went out in the water too far and she began to scream. We didn't know what the problem was. We didn't know whether she was drowning. It turned out she had run into a whole group of jellyfish. Jellyfish were part of the memory of Highland Beach at that time. And what we learned about jellyfish is that you just take some wet sand and you rub the skin with the wet sand, and you get back in the water, and jellyfish were, you know, something to be handled at Highland Beach. All kinds of races occurred on the beach. You put your foot in a bag and ran up and down the beach to see who could win. And the parents were very, very much involved here at the beach. Dr. Dean was certainly the parent par excellence, because he really made sure that we saw movies and that the Labor Day activities were planned for us. We loved it at the beach so much that we would come down on the day that school closed, and we would go up on the day that school opened. When I come to this beach, I remember the days, but I particularly remember my dad. I particularly remember the times that we spent with him on the beach at a time when he had leisure, at a time when he could take time to teach us how to swim, and at a time when he enjoyed being with his family here in the West Gregory house.
That's such a rich history, Charlene, you have. Very interesting. I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you.
Next question, what do you think made this community so unique? I know you probably stepped on some salient points and just prior to that, but do you have some more comments about that? What made this community unique?
Highland Beach and Venice Beach are very unique communities. One of the most unique things about Highland Beach is that this beach represents generations of people. I am sitting here across the street from Dr. Montague Cobb's home. My friend and the person who was in my wedding, my first marriage to Ernie Jarvis, was Amelia Cobb Gray. The Evans family is a long-duration family here at the beach. The Secundi family, the Dean family, the Nelson family, the Warner Lawson family. Yes. These are families who were a part of our lives, not only here, but in the city. We knew that there were many people at Howard, right here on Venice. E. Franklin Frazier, for example, was a member of this community at Howard. And so the envelope that surrounded us here was one that was opened in Washington and opened here together. And that's really what made this place such a unique place to be. And it's very important because there has been because of people in my generation, I speak of Ray Langston and his wife Jean, and others who preserved the Frederick Douglass home.
Yes.
Who made it a place to see, who exposed it to the larger group of Annapolitans who did not understand or appreciate this history. So the history has been preserved. And I think one of the most important things about this unique community is that we are very anxious to have the history of this very unique community preserved, so that it is a story that can be told. We're in a time now when there is, in fact, some interest in the white community in really understanding the black community. It's taken a long time for that to happen, but now there is a great interest in this community. There are a great number of aha experiences for people in the white community. And what I have said very frequently is that we lived parallel lives. We lived parallel lives. We should not be described by the problems that were seen by the larger community. We need to be described by the resilience of a community. And I think that's a very important way in which the current view of the beach needs to be viewed, not only by people outside of the beach, but by those of us who have enjoyed the opportunity to be in this beach, and who can say to others, do not describe us by our deficiencies. That is not the way we intend for you to describe us. We intend for you to describe us by our resilience and our education and our achievement motivation and our young people who understand that they are a part of a very, very important history.
You're so right. Well, the last question, you have done so much in your life. Could you please tell us something about your life and also your family? But let's start with your life.
Well, I am the second of 4 children. Bibi Roberta, Charlene Rosella, named from my grandmother, Rhea Sylvia, named for the mother of Romulus and Remus. That was my father's idea. And Charles R. Drew Jr. Bibi, in fact, was born in New York when my father was doing his research on blood preservation. And before my mother and father got to name her, the nurses called her Bibi for blood bank. And so that is, in fact, the way Bibi got her name. After that, we moved to Washington, D.C., where my father was at Howard University. We lived on Sherman Avenue, and that's a place also where I remember my dad. I went to high school in 1955. I went to an integrated high school, Roosevelt High School. The experience there was disappointing because I had come from a community where we were expected to achieve, where our teachers had been well trained, and because they could not find a position in the larger community, we had those teachers in our public schools, and we had some of the finest teachers in our public schools. When I went to the integrated environment, white teachers had no such expectations for us. And we then found ourselves in a place where we had to remember how we were taught and not to buy into what we now saw, which was this tyranny of low expectations. Nonetheless, I prospered in high school, and I went to Oberlin College. Proud of that, because Oberlin College was the first to admit women and the first to admit African Americans. Oberlin College was a great experience for me, and it enlarged my view of the world, as college is expected to. I married early to Ernie Jarvis and had these 2 wonderful boys, Ernie and Pete. We lost Pete as an adult. And I went on to the University of Maryland to earn a PhD in a field called neuropsychology. I went to National Institutes of Mental Health, and I did brain research for a number of years. And in 1968, you may remember there were the riots in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And I used to go to Bethesda every morning, and I said to myself, well, why doesn't somebody do something about rebuilding our city? And finally I said to myself, well, maybe I have an obligation to be involved, and I left science and I went into politics and was elected to office and had the opportunity to chair the Economic Development Committee and share in the rebirth of the city. Mm-hmm. And then I went from there to be president of Southeastern University, where I tried to make sure that African Americans and women not only knew their craft, but they also knew the marketing and the tax incentives and etc. I wanted to come back here to the beach. I did find this wonderful house on Venice Beach, bringing back all the memories of Venice Beach by moving into this house in 1996. And it was in this house that Bucky Moses came and visited when he came back from Washington State after the loss of his wife. And I was surprised that he came to visit, because I remembered Bucky was in the older group. And so I said, so Bucky, why did you remember to come back to see me? He said, I remembered you were 12 when you were 12 years old, which was a revelation, but a nice story. And so I have had the chance not only to be married to a wonderful man, but really to understand the history of his family in Annapolis. The merging of our lives is really the merging of a culture of which both of us were a part. It was a culture that nourished us, it was a culture that encouraged us, and I think the two of us in our own professional careers really have done what our parents and all the people along this street and that street would make them proud. So this is a place that we now come, we spend months. We love seeing our neighbors who are the children who were children when we were kids. It is the most rewarding kind of experience to have those time throughs when you can come to a community and you can say that I remember that you had a nickname that we called you. And I can remember who won some of those races. And I can remember the mothers who played cards, and I can remember the mothers who sat on the back porch. So to come back to a community with those kinds of memories is something that is very, very special. And I'm glad to be a part of talking about the history and telling you how much we revere what went on in this community and how it supported us.
Thank you, Charlene, for sharing your vivid memories of your times at the beach.
Thank you, Ben.